Okay, so hello everybody. I hope you can hear us and see us well. So my name is Maria. I represent British-Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce, the organizer of this conference. We organized this together with Core Area through Agile British Culture Innovating Digital Environment for Leading Edge Companies. We are starting now, and we will have the event that will consist of two panels. First one is beginning now. It's called Leading Innovation, Why Use Ukrainian IT Today for the UK. Then at 4:15, we will have a break for 15 minutes, and the second panel starts at 4:30 Kyiv time, and it's called How to Take the UK and Ukrainian IT Industry Forward, FinTech and Related Areas for Cooperation. So I'm introducing you Jim Brooke, who is the editor-in-chief of UBN. So he will present the speakers and actually start the discussion. So I hope you will enjoy this conversation.
Excellent, good. Maria, thank you very much, and welcome to everyone. Welcome from here in gray Kyiv, Ukraine. I look out the window, it's a little gray. We have John Harris, who's actually in the UK, and he's with CTO Global. And we have Nataly Veremeeva, who's with TechUkraine. And of course, we have the Deputy Minister of Digitalization, Oleksandr Bornyakov. And I'd like to move right along and pick your brains and get interesting thoughts. And maybe to start off with, John, if I could ask you, you're sort of in the lineup here to my right. Ukraine is the #1 destination for UK for outsourcing. Why, and sitting in London, why do you think that so many UK companies are have been turning to Ukraine to get their computer IT outsourcing work done?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. It's a good question, and it's a relatively straightforward one to answer. It really comes down to the quality of the talent and the capabilities that we see in Ukraine. It's quite different to many of the traditional sourcing markets. You know, here at Global Talent, what we find is that we can get hold of absolutely outstanding senior engineers and data scientists of a quality and a capability that would be hard to find in London. And you know, the price points are favorable. They are, you know, it's not a low cost option compared to some other players, but it is a very high talent, high capability environment. What a lot of our clients say to us as well, they really value what we call a constructive engineering conflict. And what that comes down to, it's a software engineer actually pushing back and saying, look, Jim, if you're trying to achieve X, Y, and Z, why are you doing it in this way? It seems to me we should do this. And that dialogue that you would get in any good team, you would have it in a traditional team that's face-to-face, but we get that, and we see that the folks in Ukraine are really smart, and they are creative and thoughtful to get the best outcomes for their clients. So it's really that combination of the talent being outstanding, the cultural approach and attitude being very creative and productive. And, you know, the pricing is good and it's outstanding, bearing in mind the levels of capability that we put forward.
That's great. That's really useful. Well, thank you very much. And just moving to the right, Natalia, TechUkraine, I mean, looking ahead, where is Ukraine going? We'll talk about growing out of outsourcing into R&D. If you were to look ahead 5 years, where do you think the industry is going to go here? Where will Ukraine sit in Eastern Europe in the IT sector?
Well, I believe that right now in Ukrainian tech industry, we have very exciting times, and really the industry is on the position of making expansion and really transforming into something even more add value and more interesting for international businesses. So first of all, of course, we're having the traditional outsourcing, and that still holds strong and has very strong positions. It's one of the best right now recognized in the world. We are in the top rankings, and a lot of our outsourcing companies are servicing Forbes 500 lists. More than 100 clients are from there. And we have proven already that we are able to do high quality solutions and not only just sell ours, but also do the really high risk add value services also for banks and for airline companies and for others that demand really high level of quality. But also it's very interesting to know and to understand that we have other things that are developing actively, and most prominent is of course the startup industry and also the product companies. So as you probably know, or if you don't, then it's just a good surprise. We have two or three, like it was different how you count it, but unicorns already being created and born with the roots from Ukraine, and that is Grammarly and GitLab. Also, Ring was bought by Amazon for more than $1 billion, and that's also the success story of Ukrainian businesses and also of Ukrainian developers that managed to create something so innovative that is was interesting to such giants as Amazon, as Google, as Snapchat, and as others. So the Ukrainian startup industry is currently booming. The center is Kiev, but it's also expanding in the region. And I believe that in 5 years' time, we will see further growth of this innovative products being developed by Ukrainian software developers, also because the outsourcing industry created a good base for this. And more software developers and more entrepreneurs are accustomed with the way how international business is done, and also with the international methodologies and international agenda, I would say. So we are becoming more and more included into the international trends, and that actually helps to develop this further. Also important to know, and I'm really honored to have Bornyakov on the panel, that we have special Minister of Digital Transformation being created, and that's really currently making it like really fast way forward by improving regulations, by creating different initiatives. We also have the Ukrainian Startup Fund that is supporting the early stage startups, and that is also creating all these conditions for growth of Ukrainian startups and becoming them more and more involved. The only thing that the thing that we need to solve here is that most of our Ukrainian startups are still known as international startups. They prefer to call them American, UK, Dutch, or whatever. And one of the objectives of TechUkraine, for example, is also to enforce and to improve the brand of Ukraine, so that you become aware that a lot of Ukrainian startups that you consider to be international have Ukrainian roots, and so we are actually reclaiming our place on the world global market.
Yeah, fascinating. And Alex, that's a good segue into you. I know your ministry has very ambitious targets for the number of IT workers next 3-4 years. There are also constraints. You know, where are the people going to come from? Maybe you could give us an update on bringing in the bodies. I know you've been recruiting from Belarus. How achievable is that target to double the number of IT workers in 5 years in Ukraine?
Well, thank you for the question. Well, listen, I think it's pretty much achievable. And we did a couple things to move towards this goal. You mentioned Belarus, right? So with their crisis, we really moved on inviting people from there and helping them if they moved there by force or by their own will. For instance, there are first of all, what we did is we decreased. So it's about immigration law. So in Ukraine, there was pretty strict immigration law, and the terms and the timeline, it could take a year and a half. So first we passed a government decision to decrease the number from 12 months to 2 months. So like in 2 months you issue a permit, you have to issue a permit. Just wait a second. So then we decided to increase the non-visa immigrants to terms of extension from 90 days to 180 days. Then we eliminated the need to come back if they change their status, to come back to the country, and then like so. I don't know how to explain this, but before you had to, if you come to Ukraine and then you get work permit, you have to get back and then travel back. So for most of them, it's not possible. Well, and we also issued our like 5,000 people quota for IT specialists, and with this crisis in Belarus, we increased number of specialities and decreased requirements, so more people could apply. Well, this resulted in like more than 2,000 people came to from Belarus with like 40 companies plus, and this number is growing. So the next step is, of course, with the implementation of our huge project DSCD, they'll be able to open companies, and but not just Belarusian, but many others. But still, this is the big part that we're doing, and probably this I could call this as a experiment, but we think to extend this not just to Belarusian people, but all the IT specialists in the world. Another big thing is, of course, is education. It's IT education. Well, first thing we did is we increased almost 33%. So, but third, we increased a government request for IT specialists. So government covers all the education costs for almost 21,000 people next year. And it's going to be like, again, from 30 to 40% more next year. So we're going to double, I think we're going to double government education costs covered by government by, I don't know, like double in a couple of years. So we aim to have like 40,000 people educated on IT specialities by government in a couple of years. And another thing that we are doing that we now starting to run the, it's a sort of a task project right now, but it's a cooperation between government and private IT schools. So the essence of the project is basically take people who lost their job and they on the labor market, and then if they want to apply for IT education, government covers their cost in private IT schools. So those are also like maybe 10. I'm sorry, I can hear you.
Beetroot offers a 90-day program. Is that the kind of program you're talking about? That 90-day retraining program that
no, it's different. It's a full course, maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months. It depends on the discipline, on the class, but no, it's different. It's completely, it's not started yet, but we're going to announce it soon. And well, we kind of announced it, but it's just like a test project right now. So with those initiatives and a couple others, we think that we can actually cover the demand for IT specialists, because I know that right now we feel lack of 25-30,000 people each year. But so this is going to be pretty much covered by government, even. But of course, there are a number of other initiatives we're coming up with. But those I just mentioned as a major ones.
I mean, that visa liberalization, is that now only for Belarusians, or could you come in from Kazakhstan or Moldova?
Yeah, for anyone. It works for anyone.
Yeah.
There's no discretion.
Alex, well, I have your attention. Yeah. An important part of your dossier, digitalization, is to create a digital Ukraine. And I'll name names. I had lunch with the Estonian ambassador from Estonia last week, and he was very enthusiastic about what you all are doing. Obviously, Estonia is small, you're big. How would you contrast what you're doing? I mean, as I said, you're small. Estonia is small, you're big. Are you trying to jump a generation above Estonia in applying digital passports and all this? I mean, explain to us in brief what you're doing to digitize the country.
Yeah, exactly. Look, Estonia was a great example for us, and still is. They did tremendous job in moving their country from, I don't know, like I've read about it, and it was like not digital country, and then in a couple of years they moved very quickly. But in the same time, what they did was like 10 years ago. And what changed a lot is their way the people interact with gadgets. So when they were creating their, digital country, right? There was no phone as we know it right now. So when we started to think what we can take and what we can apply in Ukraine, we realized that many of things that they've done, they kind of have to be refactored. So we decided to go with a concept called mobile first. So that's the major difference between Estonia and Ukraine. And with this concept, it really looks like we're jumping, like a making leapfrog, because there's no use of digital passport on a computer, which I'm actually sitting in front of. But anyway, you can carry on. But with the development of
smartphone.
yeah. So in order to so that will actually mobile first concept, yeah, as I mentioned before, that's the major difference. But the many things that we I don't know seen with them, we now implementing here. For instance, they have a project called X-Road, and we implemented almost similar thing called Trimbita. So electronic residency.
Yeah.
They started this project a couple of years ago. Now we're also doing this, but we're going to be more advanced because it's going to be a little bit different experience, taking account mobile application and stuff. But in the core, there'll be very similar projects. So that's how we see it.
Yeah, that's great. I hope you work on your bilingualism. You know, foreigners show up at Boryspil and they download the DIA app, you know, on their health, and it's all in Ukrainian. And not too many foreigners speak Ukrainian.
Well, criticism accepted, and we actually in the process of redoing this application, rebranding this application, and making a lot of changes in it. So definitely
good. John, you're there in the UK. I mean, what kind of companies are you seeing from the UK setting up here in Ukraine? Do you know of any companies that actually set up operations here, or are they basically farming out their work to be done here in Ukraine?
So I think a lot of it started initially as you know, farming out work to get important tasks done, but perhaps the things that are less strategic. But what we're seeing now on that base, I mean, we heard from the other speakers, Ukraine is really on the map. You know, when you're number one in the field of outsourcing in the UK, that's a sign that talent is really being recognized. All the things that Alex was talking about are, you know, real signs that this is a digital economy. It isn't an old economy that's trying to put a veneer on top. And I think the world is beginning to wake up to that. What I find is when we bring clients to the Ukraine and we take them to we're headquartered in Unit City, you can see them suddenly realizing this isn't what I expected. This is streets ahead of where the sort of the perception would be if you're sitting in London and, you know, don't get to this part of the world often. So I think when they see it, they start to really look at it through a different lens. The unicorns that Nataly mentioned, I mean, these are big brands, and folks are often surprised when we tell them, hey, you know, these started in the Ukraine. So what I think we're finding more and more is companies, when they're thoughtful about it, start to recognize that in the Ukraine, you can actually do the innovation and the creative tasks much faster. And as I said earlier, with this pushback and dialogue. So we've got a number of smaller clients that are product driven, and they can't see a better way of working other than with, you know, teams and the talent that are in the Ukraine, because it is different. If you put it to, you know, one of the traditional markets like an India, you get the same skills, but it's passive, and you as a client are having to do the thinking and the creativity, and the governance is a higher overhead. So I think we're seeing a real move up the maturity curve, and so far, every time a company tries to do a little more, the talent is able to step up to it. And just to give you one more example, Jim, that's interesting. I think the difference for Ukraine is the talent we see here can grow so much. So we can do things that go from, hey, I'm a developer. Now, actually, you started as a developer with a client in the UK or the US, and you aspire to be a CTO, and you can get there. And we've got one of those exact examples happening with one of our clients. We're taking the lead software developer and we're working to evolve and coach to get the Ukraine outsourced person to actually be their CTO. Now, those sort of things are phenomenal, and that I haven't seen that happen in other markets. And I think it is a sign of, it just comes back to talent and creativity. Great to hear what Alex was saying about keeping the pipeline going and the investment and the education, because that, I think, is the only fear. Can we keep folks at this level still coming out and working in this way? But what we see at the minute is remarkable.
Yeah, John, good point. And I think for the US, the UK, and the European companies, there's a real advantage in proximity. I remember I was flying to Paris about 2 years ago, and the guy next to me, he was doing some of the LED lights for Auchan or something. And he said, this is great. It's a 2-hour flight. I go home for the weekends. And then he said, well, don't put in your publication. I don't want my competitors. Let them fly to China and deal with the jet lag and the culture and the language problems. I'm very happy doing my work right here in Kyiv, a 2-hour flight and home for the weekend. So there's a real advantage to Western culture, 2 hours away, smart people. I just say the pushback. Now, Nataly, behind John is a picture of Unit City, which is a great place. I was out there a couple of days ago, and DTech Academy showed me their setup. I felt like I was in Berlin, or what I think is in Berlin. I've actually never been to Berlin. But also, I'm thinking about the geographical dispersion, where you've got Lviv as a major center, Kharkiv has all the universities. And I was over in Rivne watching the polls, and I interviewed the mayor-elect, 34-year-old guy from European Solidarity, very progressive type. And he wants to become like a new Rivne, new Ivano-Frankivsk, get some of the spillover from Lviv, some of the spillover from Kyiv. Are you seeing, and especially now we're all working remotely, more and more as a geographical dispersion? You've got the Unit City where there's a huge amount of synergy and companies talking to each other. On the other hand, there's smart people in Rivne who don't really want to move to Kyiv or Lviv. What are you seeing in terms of geographical spread?
I would say that I see very positive tendencies here, because really we're quite a big country, second biggest in Europe after France, with numbers vary, but around 35 million people. And that means that we enter, I think 95% of these people already have tertiary education. So we're quite an educated nation as such. And almost all regions have their universities. So we also have quite a number of different universities that is almost in every region. And most of these universities also have IT courses or IT faculties or IT departments. So IT specialists are really prepared throughout the whole country. And indeed, the fight for talent is big, because outsourcing companies are really recognized, and currently IT industry is the third exporting industry of the country, so we are already quite visible and quite big. And that actually pushes the outsourcing companies and also other IT companies to the regions, because there you can find talent that is also of very high level, but also cheaper than, for example, in the capital, because in the capital, of course, you have higher salaries than, for example, the ones that you can find in Rivne and Lutsk or in Ivano-Frankivsk or in any other cities. And also what is interesting is that we also have another important tendency that is growing, and that is clusters. Almost in every region, companies are uniting to create the NGOs, and that's not closer to German model when it is government regulated, but they are coming from the business, like a business initiative. And so the companies are uniting just to develop their own regions, because they also feel that they want to create the local communities that will create good conditions for IT professionals, for them to stay in the cities, not to move to the capital or to other bigger cities, because that's of course something that happened before, but now more and more, especially with remote work, IT professionals are choosing to stay. And one of the biggest success stories here is of course Lviv, because IT cluster there was one of the first, and they proved that they can create a very competitive space that would prevent IT professionals to move, for example, to Kiev. Kiev is still around 50% of the market, but other regions are growing, and also because of the remote work, and also because of the connections that are growing, and also we at TechUkraine are also driving to build dialogue with all of them. So we are becoming like one big IT tech hub with different distribution of talent throughout the country.
Yeah, good. Natalie, thanks. And Alex, I know you've got to take off in a little while. You've talked to us about how you're digitizing Ukraine, which European size larger than France, American size larger than California. What are you doing to develop IT across the nation? You've got 3 years, and this is your mandate.
You're on mute, Alex.
Yeah, can't hear you.
Yeah. Well, apparently I have a presentation, so maybe I can share it and just go.
Good. Yeah, great.
So yeah.
That'd be wonderful. Yeah.
You can see it, right?
I see it.
Awesome.
Yeah. I hope everyone else can.
All right. So I'm just going to go quickly. Not all of the slides. Well, I'm going to show not all of the slides, but just the major ones. So our ministry is a newly formed ministry, just a little bit more than 1 more year. And we have 4 major goals. One of them is, a major one is make 100% of the public services online for the citizen, give 95% of people broadband access to broadband internet, and teach 6 million people digital skills. The goal that I'm personally in charge of is to increase the share of IT in Ukrainian GDP up to 10% and even more. So during the first goal, you mentioned digital passport and the rest. So we came up with this application DIA, which was downloaded and well, like around today's more than 6 million times. Yeah, and it has many things like driver license, car insurance, car title, a birth certificate of your children, taxpayer number, track. So you can see that on the screen, but and then many more things upcoming. So those are priorities for the government.
Does that mean that 6 million Ukrainians are signed up or registered with DIA? Is it fair to say that 6 million Ukrainians?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Great.
Yeah. But you know, I personally use it, and it's very cool. Like you've been stopped by police, or you go for a place where you need in a bank, or you want to get delivery. You don't need to carry a passport anymore. You just give them, and then they scan it, and the magic does itself. So that's perfect thing. So, and of course it's a word of mouth. It's spreading also. So we don't spend money on marketing, like we get zero spendings on the marketing.
Yeah. Only 1 year old, and it's 10 months old. Yeah.
Like that. And for IT specifically, so your question was IT. So we're doing some things that I just listed on this slide, and I'm going to talk briefly about 3 of them and more about 1 of them. So virtual assets. So yesterday, Parliament passed the first hearing, and so we get legislation. We're trying to get to make virtual currencies, cryptocurrencies legal in Ukraine. We passed the law in the Parliament, and yesterday they voted. They supported it in the first hearing. Now we're making some changes in the second hearing. So in New Year, I think we'll adopt and apply all the virtual assets and cryptocurrencies, so we completely legal. As I mentioned before, we're making a project called e-residency. So basically, that's the platform that allow people from all over the world register and conduct business with Ukraine, not coming to the country. And also, yes, the government, our government supported our concept of development, artificial intelligence. So we also creating a legislative base for that, and put a lot of efforts in education and other areas, because we believe artificial intelligence is going to be a huge thing. So we want to support it, not just by ministry, but the whole government, and that's what we do. And DACD, the last but not least, it's a virtual economic free zone. It's basically a special regime for IT companies where they can register and get tax discounts, significant tax discount on the corporate tax, on the labor taxes, and get other many other benefits that you can see here. Well, as I mentioned before, very low labor taxes, very low corporate tax, and we offer safety of their intellectual property, and of course, little property.
Has that already been set up, or are there companies already registered under the DSCD?
It's a concept right now. We have a law registered in Parliament, but it's not passed yet. So we're in a process of kind of like editing it and making it better, because we want to, in the first quarter of next year, we want to pass it through the Parliament, so it's going to be law, and then companies can start using it, because right now you can't use it. It's just concept right now. I'm telling about future plans. So that's, and we offer also new way of interacting with between employees and employers. We call it gig worker. It's something like it's a brand new concept. We were inspired by like Uber economy, when people, drivers in Uber, they in the same time workers, but they in the same time entrepreneurs, because they have own car. They can turn off like application and do their things, and but in the same time, when they started, then they have to get orders, and so we understand that we need to make something very similar to give more freedom to IT companies with relationships between their with their employers. We're trying to implement many things like non-disclosure agreement, non-compete agreement, non-solicitation agreements, elements of the English law like convertible notes, shareholder agreement, liquidation preference, options, warranties, many things, which are not, unfortunately, not working in Ukraine at the moment. Well, and of course, promotion of education. So there's going to be some resources allocated to specifically to IT. Education. Well, that would be all. Thank you for the opportunity to present it. I definitely gonna run, but thanks for the invitation, and I hope this was useful information for you.
Yeah, Alex is great, and we will be following your progress, and I'm sure there will be progress. So congratulations, and thank you for joining us. And so why don't we move back around the circle? Bye-bye, Alex. Thanks. John, you there? Yeah, you're there. John, you with us?
I am, yeah. Hi.
Yeah, good. I think it's a question I asked Nataly. Where do you see the industry going over the next 3-4 years? Where would UK companies, if they want to kind of catch a ride in the Ukraine star, where would Ukraine be taking them? Where do you see as the evolution?
Yeah, so it's something I think about almost every day, really, and I keep seeing the picture evolve a little bit further. And indeed, just listening to Alex is another part of it. I mean, my hypothesis so far is that Ukraine is not just a country with some smart developers. Ukraine is a country that is committed and is all in to being a digital, to being a digital culture. And I think what I saw there really reinforces that. In the UK, We've seen our government do similar things. There was a reasonable digital program called YouGov, but it's nowhere near what Alex is contemplating. And the speed of adoption is what amazes me. 5 million people signing up for, the virtual identity piece, and the efficiencies that puts into an economy, the lack of paper. It's a greener model, it's a simpler model, it's classic digitization. And I think when you have a whole country working and thinking that way, that starts to drive a change. What I think what I hope will happen is that Ukraine continues to evolve on that path, and it isn't just a 1 or 2 year period in the sun where there's this rapid revolution coming. And that's why I think this commitment to education and making it more than just a capital city, that's so important. Where I think it goes from a UK perspective and from other Western economies is I think there starts to be a bit of a wake-up call. And lots of folks, so I spent many years as an enterprise CTO with some pretty big UK organizations. And the way we were conditioned to think about it is there is work that you need to do in your own team, and that is work that is strategic and important, and it would never leave the doors of your building. And there is other work that you can push out and get done at quite well at a lower dollar rate. And I think that model sort of works. It's not massively inspirational, to be honest, but it sort of works. But what I think we're now seeing, particularly with COVID, the silver lining of this terrible year is that we have all got more digital, and we've got smarter and more savvy about having meetings like this and being able to do business without the tech getting in the way. So suddenly roles that you thought had to be done in your office are being done remotely anyway. And then you get to the next conclusion of, well, where is the very best place? Where can I get the best possible person? And I think more and more the answer is Ukraine. I think it is, I think there are still a lot of UK folks that need to come and see it and experience it to really, to really get it. It's a bit like air conditioning in a car. When it's described to you, if you've never seen it, you've never used it before, you sort of, yeah, it'll be a bit cooler. When you get in the car on a hot day, whoa, this is different. I think Ukraine is like that. And I think we will see more and more companies start to realize that this is,
Like that. John, I started driving the TR3 Triumph, and then the air conditioning was taking the roof off. But I like your analogy. And it has become totally universal. I was at a pizzeria in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, run by an American guy, and I said, Bob, where do you get your, I said, it's a nice graphics, on your menu. Because, I get it done this place called Odessa. So, I mean, it's a small world, and we're all connected. John, well, I've got you on the line. A big issue for us, many monolingual Americans and UK people, is do they speak English? What's your sense on the English skills? I can't even speak it myself. How the language skills have evolved over the last 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, it's again, it is phenomenal, and it's a game changer and a big differentiator. I suspect that it's not an accident. It's people like Alex and Nataly and others taking an active decision that this is going to be something we're good at. But in previous worlds, I've worked with tech teams in Bulgaria, in Romania, in other sort of parts of the world nearby. When I first visited Kiev about 18 months ago, that was the thing that actually blew me away. It isn't just that people speak good English as a second language. It's intuitive. You can tell the stories, you can tell analogies. People are telling you a joke. These are all signs that it is a little bit different. And I also, Americans and Brits are the same. We're terribly lazy around language, and we never manage to, as a sort of generalization, we don't speak enough other languages ourselves. But it's a real differentiator to do business well and credibly in the US and UK, English is just, you know, it is what it is. And what I find with the Ukrainian folks, that ties into that creative discussion. You know, when you're trying to evolve an idea, when you're trying to do something innovative, the ability to tell the stories. When we talk about agile, it's epics and it's stories, and then, you know, we turn it into the technology. But you need to really have a good mastery of English for those stories to really work. And in Ukraine, honestly, again, it blows me away just how good English is. It's practically native. In fact, I know some Ukrainians who speak better English than some of my friends I grew up with back in the north of England. So there you go.
Yeah, well, no comment about that. It's funny because I have a friend who was just about to go back to the States, and he said, oh, a Ukrainian IT company just emailed me and they'd like to come and have me teach English, you know. So there's a real premium, I think, on inside learning English beyond being able to read a technical manual or, you know, just software. Nataly, once again, where we could think outside the box, and it's 2025. How are things in Ukraine different, especially for the foreign investor or the foreign company that works here? How do you think things will be different in the next 5 years?
Well, also one of my roles was the national coordinator for IT expert strategy for IT sector, and we were actually making the objectives of where are we heading for in the next 3 to 5 years. And like we have 3 objectives to solve in order for us to move forward, and that is creation of the business environment, and that's something that Alex and the team of Ministry of Digital Transformation is really actively doing right now, and they have also this also the insight from the industry what actually needs to be done. The second is the education, and that's also something that we're currently very busy with, as you also have heard. And the third is the promotion and the improvement of the communication of Ukraine tech hub with the rest of the world. So these are the 3 objectives that will allow us to make the next step forward. And of course, what we aim for is to create the more add value for our services and products that we're providing. So when we're speaking about IT outsourcing industry, I see them moving in 2 directions. So first, they're moving towards more add value solutions. So like not something that is done by just selling hours, but rather something that is done by Accenture, by IBM, by Microsoft. So really the full solutions for different kinds of projects that actually allow high level and also high risk environments. And second is also from IT outsourcing industry and also from the new teams that are coming from universities. We see the emergence of startups that turn into product companies in the due term. So for us to really make the next move, we of course need to improve the integration of science and entrepreneurship, and we also see these tendencies. We also have such programs as GEP, for example, that is also supported by the ministry and also by some donor programs like USAID, for example, competitive economy program. That's one of the big financial programs that is supporting such initiatives, and they are having entrepreneurship courses in most of the key universities and educating the next level of entrepreneurs. So we can see the next generation of startups that will be using the innovation, and of course we have good scientific background and some of the research that was conducted already back in Soviet times, and since then also some of them even now is lying in tables, hard to access, but quite promising in terms of some business application. And also I hope that also the science is also making some achievements. So there will be some new research made. So I see this next generation of startups and product companies. Also, I think that Ukraine will be discovered as an R&D center, because we already have some R&D centers in Ukraine. One of the biggest is Samsung, for example, and most of them are coming from the US, but there are also some from other countries. I think that what is stopping currently is the regulations, but once the business part will be solved, and currently it's already easier than before. Bigger players will also enter the market, and so they will also introduce this new approach how to, for example, work with the universities. So,
Yeah.
so basically, I
things,
think this would be the way forward. Yes.
Yeah, and I think everyone out there has been very patient listening. Maria, are we going to can we take questions? Can people ask us questions, SMS us questions?
Yeah, sure. If anybody has any questions, they can leave them in the chat or just unmute yourself and ask the question. So just if you let them.
Yeah, exactly. So everybody, yeah, don't be mute. Just email us or SMS your questions to chat. And one quick question about marketing. I'll never forget, I once did an item in the Ukraine Business News, and it was about an IT startup. And like the next morning, I get this angry email from the guy saying, you know, you misspelled the middle name, the patronymic of, it's like, no, slow down. I took your obscure startup that no one had ever heard of, and I exposed it to 10,000 potential foreign investors. You know, it's called marketing and PR. And there is there's a lot of brain work here, but the very simple marketing techniques are often really, really lacking. And I hope it's not, you know, the STEM kind of education that everyone gets here, but I hope there's some sort of education in marketing and promotion. And not only that's what you're doing is you're trying to promote the Ukraine IT brand beyond our borders. Any thoughts on that about, and same thing, an Israeli group came in and I talked to them and they were trying to set up some angel investors, seed capital sort of thing. They said, you know, the number one problem we run into is not the tech side. These people can't market themselves. So I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
That's indeed a challenge for us. And again, we're learning how to communicate about ourselves and to sell ourselves. And that is something that we are catching up on, I would say. Indeed, we're TechUkraine saw this gap and saw this need of gathering some unified information about Ukrainian tech sector, because we're aware that we're not communicating ourselves well and not sharing our success stories, not sharing the information about where to find the right contacts or the right partners. So we, with our portal, TechUkraine.org, really set this objective and tried to gather all the reports, all the information about tech hubs, all the success stories, so that you can actually see what it is, what Ukraine is at the moment. Because if we're not busy with that, of course, the newspapers are taking some hot topics like war and corruption and everything. So, and we're not really busy with that, though we underestimate the importance of actually showing the true capacity and true things, and overblowing some things that are not so big actually. And other countries also have the same problems, but still they are considered to be successful. And here there are already a number of initiatives.
One problem is that a lot of the IT work, it's not, you know, battle the tanks. It's not that sexy stuff. It's basically back office stuff. So, you know, like the big US banks are in Manhattan and the back office is somewhere in New Jersey. And there's no point in advertising that part. And I think I've read that of the Fortune 500 American companies, 100 have done business in Ukraine, outsourcing. But there's no upside in advertising. You know, they're not going to sell more cars or more Coca-Colas or whatever.
Yeah, more than that, some of the such contracts are under NDA, so they are not even showcased. Yes, so like Ukrainian IT companies are not having the right to say that, okay, this part of the job was done by Ukrainian teams. For example, we do the autonomous driving for some big German brands. And, we can't say for which brands and which part of autonomous driving we're doing. We just know that this is actually something that's happening. I don't know how to solve this problem currently, apart from when we do more add value and we do more solutions, and we probably regain the right to say that this part was done by Ukraine. So this is actually a gradual process, and the more Ukrainian brands will be enforced, the more visibility we will have towards the quality of the work and the level of projects that we're doing. I think that it is an iterative process, and eventually we will see the growth, and we try to do as much as possible to make it happen as soon as
And also, it's kind of who you're trying to get through to. I know as a journalist, you know, Chevrolet, Ford, they love to talk to us because they're trying to sell cars. But for, say, IT work, you really want to get through to those CTOs and make an impression with them. To make an impression on the average guy in the street, like what is the upside there? But if you can get through, and I know statistics like 17 of the top 100 outsourcing companies in the world are basically Ukraine based. That also starts putting Ukraine on the map for these CTOs, as I see. John, a little question. You're in there in London, fighting the good fight for, presumably for Ukraine investment. When you look over your shoulder, who's there? Are the guys from Bangalore? Who's some of the competition?
Yeah. So the guys from Bangalore, they're very, very big and very successful and have been for a long time. And so numbers don't lie when you look at the scale that they've built up. What I think we are finding though is, you know, that they can have, that there's enough space on the pitch for all of us. There's a certain part of it that I think they do well. I think when you are doing sourcing for big traditional corporate projects, if you're doing, you know, an Oracle or an SAP rollout, there's probably more skills there. And, you know, quite explicitly, I don't think the Ukraine tech education has targeted those kind of, you know, software packages. It's been much more around the pure computer science, engineering and data science. But what I think we are seeing is a lot of them would like to play in this more creative and innovative space, and they just can't get there. They tell a great story. You know, they'll have a CTO or a marketing head that they'll roll out who tells a story, but they can't then back it up with the talent actually working the right way on the ground. So I think more of the competition actually is other folks in this region. You know, we talked earlier about Estonia. They stand out, but it's a smaller talent base. So I think Ukraine's well positioned there. The Polish companies are excellent, but their price point is now, there's very little difference. These things I think are future problems for the Ukraine. I mean, I think you touched on an important thing with marketing. I think what's going on in Ukraine at the minute is quite brilliant, but we do have to tell the story a little more loudly and a little better. I know if I can get a CTO to come to Kiev and have a look, and I don't know Lviv and Odessa quite so well, but I would imagine it's similar. Once you get them here and they see and experience it, they get it, they go through a transformation. Telling that story loud and clear in London is a little harder. So I think whatever we can do to amplify the great things that are happening, that's always going to be good. I think the other thing that is really important as Ukraine develops and evolves in the tech space is we've got to get far enough up the value chain, because at some point prices will get higher and higher, and that's good, the economy is growing, but at that point you've got to be good and recognized for being good, not just for being able to get work done. And where I think there is a gap, and it perhaps ties to the marketing piece, I think in some overall strategic business skills, it's a relatively young economy at the minute, or the tech economy is a young economy. So there aren't as many corporate CTOs and marketing folks out there who've grown up with business credentials in the Ukraine. I think we need to help folks on that journey. There's a lot of brilliant folks coming out as startups, but if we can help people evolve to be a great business leader across the range of disciplines as well as just in tech, I think that's going to be important for success in 4 or 5 years. And from there, we'll see the marketing come. I think then you'll start to see more companies set up in Ukraine rather than farm work out there, because they'll see, I can get a great CTO or a great marketing person or a great general manager in Ukraine. So some of that, though, is just, it's part of the journey, right? You need to cover the miles before you've got the experience. And I think that's where we are at the minute. But I really hope it, continues to go up the food chain.
Yeah, one quick thing, Nataly, and I do see we've got a couple of quick questions coming in. Nataly, are you seeing any repats? I mean, basically Ukrainians who may move to Krakow, study there, and then settle down, and now they're saying, oh, well, Ukraine now has a maturing IT industry in Lviv, where I can earn salaries that are competitive with Poland, but I can be here with my family. Are you seeing any reverse flow of people who've gotten EU experience deciding to come back and work here?
Yes, absolutely. Unfortunately, I don't have the exact numbers, but I do see the trend, and indeed, quite a number of software developers are returning. And entrepreneurs, sometimes they move, but then they create their companies, become entrepreneurs with teams sitting in Ukraine, so they are moving back and forth for several reasons. So if you're speaking about IT developers, they realize salaries in Ukraine currently are quite competitive to the ones that they get in Europe. And if we're speaking about taxes that you pay that are deducted from the salaries of IT specialists in Europe, then salaries in Ukraine are becoming even more competitive, because we are having special conditions here, and companies are also fighting quite heavily for IT resources. If we're speaking about entrepreneurs, they are also seeing huge possibilities, because, of course, doing business in Ukraine and opening R&D centers in Ukraine, or having development teams in Ukraine, is also easy. It also has good quality, and if you understand the market, you can do it quite well. So if they even settle in other countries, they open their sales offices over there, but they do their development in Ukraine, and in this way they also regain the connection with the country.
Yeah, that's great. And so just to follow up, one quick thing you said, John, in terms of the East European competition, it would be Estonia, which is small, Poland, which is big, and I guess Belarus, which is a bit under the gun, literally. Are there significant, my son runs an IT company in Manhattan, and his partner's in actually a Belarusian living in Sofia, Bulgaria. And I don't know if there's in that part of the world, if there's much competition, or it's sort of small.
Yeah, but Bulgaria actually are, again, very strong. What I sense is a lot of the competition there it's coming more from the capital cities. So Sofia, I've worked with some great tech folks out there, actually. But what I think we're seeing happen in Ukraine, which is part of making sure this journey has longevity, is it's more than one city. I think Nataly referenced Lviv, we've talked about Odessa, but also the whole concept of getting regions to start to evolve and develop. That, I think, is a little different, and it's harder to do for the other big countries around. As I say, I think Poland went through a different kind of journey and started earlier, and there was a number of different industrial evolutions happening at the same time. But I think purely with this focus on tech, I think Ukraine's ability to really keep that pipeline fed. I mean, our biggest fear as a tech services company is that the talent either drops off in capability, or there's such a huge increase in price that things become difficult. So I think that the Ukraine has the scale, and we need to really keep doing all of the things that are being done the right way to keep the education and the focus there. One more thing that I just want to say on education, which I touched on with a CTO in London the other day. I said, look, the real difference, and I'm being a bit critical of our own nations and so on, and I suspect it's similar in the US as well, Jim. You come through university and you've learned a bit and you've had a good time and lessons in life on the sports field and the rest of it. The intensity of education in Ukraine is really impressive. So you come out after 3 years of data science and you've come out a long way ahead of a lot of the folks leaving our universities in terms of the discipline. Now, there's another debate about what it should be about, but if I'm selfishly looking at, we want people with brilliant data science technical capability, the way that it's taught and the immersion in the subject and the discipline is really, really impressive. I think that's a bit differentiated. There aren't many places around the world where that's happening and your graduates are coming out with such a level of talent.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. They are very concerted, and I have a 4.5-year-old, and I think he's intimidated by what he sees around him. One quick thing, unfortunately, we're heading into almost 1 year of very limited flights, for example, between London and here. If you go back to this time last year, you could fly from Kyiv, either from Boryspil or Giuliani, to 3 London airports on a daily basis. And my question is, how is this impacting the deal flow? You kind of coast on the contacts you made at conferences and Zoom and webinars, keep things going a little bit, but we don't really see a light at the tunnel until maybe the spring. And very quickly, before lunch today, I stopped by Coral Travel, one of the big travel agencies here, and it was really sad. The place is empty, and they kind of looked at me and said, "Why are you here?" I said, "Well, I'm a client." And so I went and talked to the lady. I said, "Look, I bought tickets for my wife and me to go to Israel." And she just kind of smirked that you bought tickets to Israel. There's no Ukrainian tourism in Israel since June. Now, maybe she was exaggerating a little bit. But the simple fact is we are struggling under what will be almost a full calendar year of shutdown of face-to-face conferences, of quick city break visits, fly from London to Lviv for a weekend, which you could do this time last year. You could not do 5 years ago. I mean, the explosion of international air connections has been stupendous. So what is the impact? Do you feel that the deals or businesses continue to go forward, or we're going to kind of run out of gas without having the face-to-face contacts?
So, look, it's not a good thing. I do have a silver lining to come back to, but it's not a good thing. It's much harder. And bearing in mind everything we've said so far, Ukraine is an experience. I need to get you in the car to feel the air conditioning before you realize what it's really like. If I just describe it, you think it sounds good, but it's never quite the same. So, there's no substitute for getting people into all our various locations. For us, Unit City is a big draw. So it is harder, and the flights are still there. I was in Kiev 2 or 3 weeks ago. I flew out with Wizz Air and back with Ukraine International Airways. Really good flights, really well managed, really professional, really safe. All the things that you would expect to be done. Yeah, absolutely. And great sanitization and just actually everything.
You fly the whole way?
I did. I was good. Other than when I had my being a Brit, I had to have a cup of tea, so I took it off for that. But no, I mean, they're doing it as well as they possibly can, and they're keeping the links open, and the flights are pretty busy, but it's nowhere near what it was. And what we're finding as well is people aren't allowed to travel for business. So we had a big event planned for January in Unit City. We've moved that back to March. I'm hoping that some of our guests from the UK and Europe and even the States will be able to travel by March as the vaccine comes in. But it is, it's going to be important because, it is a place, and you have to get folks here. They have to actually see the talent And then they realize actually that there are, you know, there are business folks here as well, like myself and our founder, Andy Baines, sort of grown-ups who've been around a bit, and we are all bought into it. And then some of the investors and customers see it through a different lens. The silver lining is, of course, the COVID remote working. Suddenly we've got people to recognize, oh yeah, actually that data architect that needs to be in London or Cambridge or Oxford or Manhattan, yeah, maybe they don't, because they're going to be on the end of a Zoom call anyway. So what I'm bothered about now is how smart they are. And that's where we can win, because when we can say, well, would you like a guy, never mind with a bachelor's degree in data science, would you like a master's degree or a doctorate? And by the way, here's the unicorns that he or she has worked with, and here's the papers they've written. What do you get for the same? You know, can you even find that person in London? Will they work for your company? So that, I think, is the silver lining, and we can perhaps capitalize that on more next year as people have got used to it. But I'd have preferred it to be a normal year with folks on planes and folks coming here to, you know, to feel the passion, feel the energy.
Yeah. No, John, I agree with you. I mean, it's very clear that Kyiv and Ukraine sells itself. So you get someone here, they get it. Nataly, what are you seeing? Do you sense the deal flow may have tapered off a little bit as people's personal contacts have slowed down through meeting fewer people? There's less sort of synergy. What are you sensing? What's happening out there?
Yes, I also see that there are certain difficulties in getting the business done, and also quite a number of IT companies, they traveled abroad and they visited different conferences and different events. And of course, most of key IT companies, they do have representative offices in other countries, but that doesn't help right now because still there are no meetings. So anyway, if you're based in Kyiv or if you're based in London or Chicago or any other location, you still do Zoom calls. So that's a little bit of a hurdle, but I see also some, like, the industry is not standing still and actively searching ways out, and one of such is the online conferences and online meetups, and one of such meetups is the one that we're currently having. So we still do need to do business with each other and communicate with each other, and of course, like, I'm also personal, and I'm sure a lot of people are liking this face-to-face connection. But if we are put in such conditions right now that we need to do it this way, so we are learning and we're adopting, and I hope that this lockdown will not last for years to come, but it will finish and we will be come back to the normal face-to-face interactions. But anyway, even this experience will help us to move even bigger step towards digital, not only in IT, but also in other industries. So I think that the pace of digitalizing other industries will increase after this experience that we had right now. And also that remote teams will become more and more popular, and also working from home can become quite a working option, more working than before. So we'll have this shift in the way how the work is done, and somehow overcome this hurdle, because of course there are obstacles, but there are business conditions, there are economies, and we will rethink this and move forward, I believe.
Yeah, I think we all three agree that one lesson from the COVID experience has been that geography, location really doesn't matter. I'm from a small town in what we call the Berkshires, not the Berkshires, in about 3 hours north of New York. And I discovered the private school enrollment is up 20%, housing prices are up 20%, and 3 hours is a long commute to New York. They're not commuting to New York, they are just relocating and putting themselves up where they think life is healthier. And so when people make that decision, it really doesn't matter where you are. It matters more what you do. I think that opens the door for Ukraine even more. But yeah, let's get the flights, more flights, John, and more people in here. I think that really will be good. I've got one question here, which I think we sort of dealt with, but it's drawing on a new Europe report about how the perception of Ukraine is very varied according to country, and what can be done to make perceptions more uniform, which would simplify the marketing of Ukraine. I don't know, my thought on that is that, once again, you're not trying to sell, electric cars, you're trying to get through to investors, CTOs, CIOs, who are, once again, they are influenced what the mass media is saying. But Nataly, you're to some degree in the marketing area. I mean, what do you think about trying to level out and obviously level up the image of Ukraine to the west of us?
Well, we do have different ideas how to do that. So first of all, the ecosystem rankings. So for example, this year, Startup Link issued a report in which Ukraine was in top 30, so number 29. And that was not only because we did such a sudden move in our development of the economy, but also that we were able to provide the information about the ecosystem. So it is about the communication. And the more we communicate also numbers, information to media, to journalists, to ecosystem ranking reports, the more evenly they will be perceived, because currently we're still closed, and this is also something that we're really working on at TechUkraine, just to make this change. And the second thing that we're also thinking is that we need also from our ecosystem to make a unified message from ourselves. And for this reason, we together with Unity and also with other partners are preparing some kind of a workshop how to pitch Ukraine, and together all the change makers, the leaders of communities and associations and clusters, for us really just to make this unified communication, because when it is varied, it's not very strong, and we really want to agree how we're going to speak about ourselves, because the narrative also matters, and also showing all the data and really telling the stories in the right way.
I should toot my own horn for the Ukraine Business News, which of course is a free email Monday through Friday morning, and it's 30-second read or 30-second scan or a 5-minute read. But the interesting point there is we've gotten more and more readers. So we did English, then we did Ukrainian, Russian, and we've added German, and now we have a French edition every day, going out to 1,500 French readers. The German goes out to Austria, Switzerland, and Germany, also 1,500. And we have a 6th mystery language, which will start in a couple of weeks. And I can let on to this esteemed audience that we're adding Polish. And we're actually adding, I'm losing track of the numbers, I think a 7th language. I have a meeting next week with someone who wants to add another language, which I shouldn't talk about. But this reflects the interest in what people see as Europe's next frontier economy. This is where it'll happen. The political news may be a little depressing, frankly, but if you look at Ukraine as a business story, as an investment proposition, it's actually quite interesting, and there's a lot of upside to be had. So we're doing quite well. I hope you're all readers. John, are you getting it? Send me your email.
I am, yeah. It's with you right now.
Okay, good. Okay, well, I think we're kind of running out of time. Maria, we're going to the 20th after the hour, right?
Yes, so we will have a 15 minutes break, and at 4:30 we will begin our second panel. So you can just stay here for this time and wait for the beginning, or rejoin by the same link.
Okay, I'm going to run out and pick up my son. But I think we've really covered a lot of points. I mean, John, Nataly, any other points, or maybe we'll let it go for now. Maria, you're the moderator of the moderator. Tell me what to do.
Yes, you can say just conclusive remarks, and then we will go to the break.
Yeah, okay, good. Well, it's really been very, very interesting to get this all very up to date, and especially with our absent third Alex telling us about the progress of DIA. Important to remember, DIA launched, let's say February of this year, like maybe 8 months ago. It has not been promoted. You walk down the streets of Kyiv, you don't see big billboards like sign up for DIA or we'll take away your house or something. It's completely, as he said, word of mouth, and 6 million out of 36 million means in 8 months they've signed up. You're the math geniuses here. 15% of the population or something. So I think it's a silent story and it reflects the depth of IT skills. I see this all the time when I'm writing the news that Ukrainians are fast adapters for cashless transactions. Even before the COVID thing, no touch purchases. This is a very IT savvy, IT friendly population. And you can just go into the market and see little ladies with their smartphones. It's really universal. So it's an exciting place to be, exciting place to watch. And as I say, I think the frontier market for Europe for the future. So I'm going to sign off on that. And Maria, thank you for setting it up. Thank you for inviting everybody. And I think there's more good stuff to come. So.
Yeah, so thank you, Jim, for moderating. It was excellent discussion, and thank you, John, Natalie, and Oleksandr, who left for this conversation. I hope it helps to understand the current condition of the industry. So please welcome to stay and wait for 13 minutes now. And we will begin exactly at time.
Great.
Thank you all.
Okay, thanks again. Bye-bye. John, look me up when you come to Kyiv. Bye.